What if the silence is the loudest warning? My story doesn't begin with vows or heartfelt declarations. It starts with a blaring 7:06 a.m. alarm, the click of a bathroom door locking from the inside, and the unmistakable sound of Lyra, my wife, giggling while texting someone who most definitely wasn't me. I hadn't planned a knock. Truly. Lyra's electric toothbrush hummed behind the frosted glass, then stopped. That's when the giggling started. Not the soft, familiar sound she used to make with me. No, this was a deeper, warmer laugh, laced with a spark I hadn't heard from her in months. It had heat. I tapped once. No reply. A second time. Still nothing. Then a hushed whisper filtered through the door. "Stop it. I told you. I can't text you when he's home." That was the moment. That precise second, something inside me cracked so quietly it made no sound. Yet I felt it acutely, like bone splitting beneath skin. People often say betrayal hits like a truck. For me, it hit like a whisper, through a door I'd paid for. Here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It's rarely a sudden explosion. Often it's a slow erosion, a quiet decay. I'm not proud of what I did next. I instinctually checked the laundry basket in the hallway for her phone charger. It wasn't there, which was odd. She never charged downstairs. So trying to steady my trembling hands, I walked slowly into the kitchen. Her other phone, the one I rarely saw, was tucked in a drawer. I opened it. Locked. Face ID, definitely not mine. Back in the hallway she emerged, the bathroom door swinging open as if nothing had transpired. Steam swirled around her like a ghost. She leaned in, pressing cold lips against my cheek. A cold heart. I stood there, letting it happen. A monumental fool, a coward, a husband clinging to the desperate belief that his wife was merely stressed. But deep down, I knew. Stop. Read this if you're ignoring the red flags. Just 2 nights prior, she'd declared I didn't deserve her affection. I'd rationalized it as a fight, a rough patch we'd overcome. But now it resonated as a chilling warning I'd foolishly disregarded. She left for work unusually early that day. No goodbye, just the swish of her favorite red coat, the one I'd given her for our anniversary. Her wedding ring sat next to the sink, discarded without a flicker of hesitation. I sank to the cold tile floor, right where her cold lips had touched my cheek, and stared at that stupid silver band like it still held any meaning. That was the last morning I played dumb. From that day forward, I watched everything. And what I found, it didn't just destroy my marriage, it destroyed who I thought Ethan Litton was. The house felt colder that day, not in temperature, the heat was on as always, but in energy. Her scent, once a constant comfort, no longer lingered. The corner where she kept her boots now had 2 pairs conspicuously absent. In the drawer beside our bed, her favorite earrings, a honeymoon gift, were also gone. I tried not to assume. Maybe she'd simply moved them, or packed light. But the deeper I looked, the more glaringly obvious it became. She had been systematically extracting herself from this life, from Yarsa life, like a careful thief, diligently avoiding any alarm. I just hadn't noticed until now. This subtle shift revealed everything. Around noon, I sat at the dining table, laptop open, a cup of coffee growing cold. I clicked open our shared digital calendar. Several recent entries had been purged. A dinner at my boss's house, a weekend cabin trip we'd planned, even the mundane grocery list. All gone. I scrolled through her social media. Nothing recent, nothing with me, nothing of us. The only thing she'd posted in weeks was a cryptic quote, "You can't pour from an empty cup." Was that what she saw me as? A vessel she no longer wished to refill? The digital breadcrumbs she left and the ones she erased spoke volumes. I went into the basement, a space she rarely frequented, and pulled out the old fireproof box where we kept important documents. And that's where the next blow landed. Her passport was missing. Our joint savings account was no longer joint. She had quietly transferred her half into a separate account 2 weeks prior. The receipt was still in the envelope. My breath caught. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a planned escape. For a second, I couldn't breathe. This wasn't merely emotional distance. This was an exit strategy, meticulously executed. So I did something pathetic. I messaged her, "Hey, can we talk tonight?" I waited 3 excruciating hours. Nothing. Then finally at 4:38 p.m., her reply buzzed, "I'll be late. Don't wait up." I didn't. Instead, I waited outside. At 11:12 p.m., my world shattered into 1,000 pieces. Headlights cut through the darkness. She stepped out of a sleek black sedan with tinted windows, a car I'd never seen before. She didn't notice me hidden in the shadows. She laughed as she said goodbye to the driver, a tall man with sharp features, exuding an expensive cologne that reached me even from 15 feet away. She leaned in and kissed him, not on the cheek, not a perfunctory peck, a real kiss. I froze. My body went still, but my mind shattered into 1,000 screaming voices. I wanted to confront them, to scream, to demand answers. But I didn't. I backed away quietly, a ghost in my own life. She walked inside, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't follow her. Why escaping your own home can be the first step to freedom. That night I slept in my car, not out of necessity, but because the mere thought of sharing a roof with her felt like a slow poison. I sat there, parked down the street, and meticulously wrote everything down. Every moment, every sound, every stupid detail. It became a habit after that, documenting her double life. But I wasn't documenting for revenge. Not yet. At that point, I still wanted answers. I still believed there had to be a reason. What I didn't know then was that the truth would be far worse than anything I could have imagined. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen wearing that same red coat from the previous night, her hair still artfully curled, mascara smudged in a way that screamed she hadn't just come home to sleep. She poured her coffee, scrolled through her phone, not even glancing my way. I forced a smile, asked if she had plans for the day. She mumbled something about a yoga class and left 10 minutes later. What happens when yoga means something entirely different? I waited precisely 20 minutes, then followed. It wasn't yoga. It wasn't even close. I parked 3 spots behind her, outside a quaint cafe on Carter Street, the one with ivy-covered brick walls and notoriously overpriced smoothies. She entered alone, but she didn't stay that way. 10 minutes later, the same man from the night before walked in. I watched from my car. He placed a hand on her back as he sat. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. In fact, she smiled wider than I'd seen her smile in years. I hadn't even known she could still smile like that. The smile I hadn't seen in years, now aimed at someone else. They stayed for an hour. I took pictures, not to post, not to share, but to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it, that I wasn't losing my mind. Because when the person you love looks at someone else like that, you start questioning every shared memory you've ever built. When she returned home that afternoon, she kissed my forehead like a nurse checking on a patient. Then she went upstairs, locked the door, and didn't emerge for 2 hours. I stood outside that door, silent, just listening. No calls this time, no texts, just silence and distance, and me spiraling in my own skin. Can silence be louder than any argument? By the end of the week, I had collected enough evidence to fill a folder: receipts, timestamps, photos, notes. And here's the sick truth about loving someone who's betraying you. I still loved her. I still longed for her to walk in one morning and declare, "I made a mistake." I hated myself for that, for the way I still cared, for the way I still waited for her to choose me. But then came the voicemail. Sunday night, I was sitting on the floor in our laundry room, the only place she never bothered to go, listening to her voice echo off the tile. It was a recording, one she didn't know I had. She left her second phone in the car that afternoon. It buzzed when a message came in, and for once, it wasn't locked. My hands shook as I opened it, but what I found inside stopped my breath completely. A voicemail from her to him. The voicemail that didn't just break my heart, it killed something inside me. I just don't want to pretend anymore. He's so safe, so boring. I feel like I'm living with a ghost. I can't even remember the last time I touched him without feeling pity. She laughed. Laughed. That was the night something inside me died. Not the cliched heartbreak you read in books. No, something colder. more surgical. I stopped being a man trying to fix things. I started being a man documenting the autopsy of his own marriage. I didn't confront her, not yet, because I realized she wasn't afraid of losing me, but she should have been. 2 weeks after that voicemail, Lyra announced she was going on a leadership retreat with her department. A conference update, she said. 3 days, all women from the firm, no phones allowed during sessions. She even printed out an itinerary, color-coded, with hotel names and workshop titles. It looked official, impressive even. But the more perfect the lie, the easier it is to spot. I had already stopped believing anything she said, so I played along. Sounds exciting, I told her, handing her the travel mug she liked. She smiled genuinely for once, like she'd fooled me again. But I had already scheduled those same 3 days off work. She didn't know. I let her go, gave her a warm goodbye, carried her suitcase to the trunk myself, and watched her drive off with her overnight bag in a carefully packed suitcase full of deception. 3 days to unravel a lifetime of deceit. 5 hours later, I checked into a hotel 2 miles from hers. I had already called the hotel she claimed she was staying at, booked a room with a view of the parking lot, and spent 2 days just watching. The first night, she didn't even check in. I sat on the window ledge, lights off, eyes trained on the entrance. No sign of her. The car she claimed she was using never appeared. But at 11:20 p.m., I finally caught her. She pulled up in a completely different vehicle, wearing jeans and a leather jacket I hadn't seen in over a year. The leather jacket she wore, a forgotten piece of her past, now a beacon of betrayal. She was laughing again, that same laugh I hadn't heard since before she stopped holding my hand. He was with her, the man from the cafe, from the car, from the voicemail. He stepped out, placed his hand low on her back, and they walked right past the hotel entrance, around the corner, to the boutique guest house next door. A quiet, romantic place. I followed, not too close. I waited, watched them disappear behind a private gate labeled Suite 3. My hands numb, not from the cold, but from the truth that finally froze my heart. I didn't know what to do with myself. I just stood there in the cold, my breath fogging the air. The realization struck me. She didn't even feel the need to hide anymore. I wasn't a threat. I wasn't her husband. I was a placeholder, someone she'd already left, even if I was still physically in the picture. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my car, writing everything in my journal, not because I needed notes, but because I didn't trust my own memory anymore. Her lies had bent the truth so much, I needed to remind myself what was real, what was mine. And then something shifted. I looked around the room I was in, saw the 2 empty water bottles from the vending machine, the untouched breakfast bar on the counter, and realized I was disappearing, quietly day by day, just like she wanted. If she wanted me gone, I'd give her exactly that, but on my terms, and not before I watched her burn her entire fantasy down, piece by piece, with her own hands. When I got back from the hotel, I didn't speak a word. Lyra returned the next evening, humming as she carried her suitcase through the door, her voice light, like someone who just had a relaxing spa getaway. She smelled like another man's cologne, not even trying to mask it anymore. She greeted me with a peck on the head and asked if I wanted Thai or sushi for dinner, like everything was perfectly normal. I said, Thai. Then I excused myself and went into the garage. That's where I started phase 1 of my quiet revolution. Over the years, I handled all the mundane parts of our life. Utilities, car insurance, Wi-Fi, streaming accounts, even the rent, all in my name. She liked it that way. Less hassle for her, more control for me. So I used it. Over the next 2 weeks, I began untangling myself from her world. In just 2 weeks, I systematically dismantled our shared life. I rented a small apartment across town, furnished month to month under a different name. I got a new phone with a fresh number. I set up a digital mailbox in another state. Quietly, without drama, without confrontation, I removed myself from every piece of the shared web we had built. Then came phase 2. I visited the bank and moved my remaining funds to a private account. I canceled our shared credit card. I pulled my name off anything I could. Joint subscriptions, backup numbers, medical contacts. Act now, Learn how to secure yourself before it's too late. I deleted myself like a ghost, and all the while I acted normal. I cooked dinner. I folded her laundry. I listened as she told fake stories about team-building workshops that never happened. I smiled. I nodded. And inside, I built the quietest escape plan imaginable. One night, she got a phone call while I was in the kitchen. She thought I couldn't hear her, but I could. She whispered, "He's still here, but not for long. He'll fade out eventually." Then she laughed. That laughter again. Her laughter, a dull blade twisting in an already gaping wound. It hit me harder than anything before, because it wasn't anger in her voice. It was boredom. She was waiting me out like you wait for a candle to burn itself down. But I wasn't going to fade. I was going to disappear so completely that one day she'd wake up and realize she'd built her entire life around a lie. And now the man she discarded without blinking had pulled the rug out from beneath her feet. I started storing things at the new apartment. Clothes, documents, backups of every message she ever sent to her secret number. And I kept a file. I called it The Departure. Every day I added to it. Her schedule, her patterns, her dishonesty, her words. This wasn't revenge. It was an audit of a life built on sand. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning an audit of her life, of our marriage, of the image she sold to everyone around her. Then came the night that triggered the final phase. She came home late again, this time drunk. She dropped her purse by the door and mumbled something about how I never did anything exciting and that maybe she needed a man who wasn't so afraid of being ordinary. She passed out on the couch before I could even respond, the unexpected confession that solidified my resolve. I looked at her for a long time. This woman who once promised to grow old with me had slowly carved me out of her world, thinking I'd never have the guts to walk. But I wasn't walking. I was vanishing, and when I left, she'd realized that control doesn't mean anything when there's no one left to manipulate. It happened on a Friday. The apartment was nearly empty by then. How to disappear without making a sound. I had already moved 80% of my stuff to the new place. Not that she noticed. I had replaced clothes with similar ones. Left old pairs of shoes while taking the good ones. The shelves still held books, but the ones that mattered were already packed away. I left just enough behind to keep her illusion going. Just enough to stay invisible while I slipped out of the life she clearly didn't want me in anymore. That evening, she came home earlier than usual. She was quiet, which was rare. Her voice usually filled the room before she even took off her heels, either humming or complaining, or pretending to care how my day was. But this time she dropped her purse, looked around the room and asked, "Did you do something in here?" I shrugged. "Just vacuumed." She stared at me. "No, it feels different." I smiled, not a fake one, a real calm smile. I said, "Maybe you're finally noticing things." What happens when your partner finally starts noticing? That night, I left my phone on the counter with the screen lit, unlocked, and accidentally displaying a folder full of photos I'd printed. Ones I had taken of her with him in the cafe, outside the guest house, kissing in the parking lot. I went upstairs without a word and waited. The clatter of heels, then a silence that spoke volumes. It took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of silence before I heard her heels clatter on the floor, then the sound of paper being picked up, then breathing. Not her usual shallow kind. No, this was deeper, uneven, like she had been punched in the gut. Another 10 minutes passed before I heard her slowly walk up the stairs. I expected shouting, tears, excuses, but she didn't even open the door. She just stood outside our bedroom and whispered, "Where did you get those?" I didn't answer. I just laid back on the bed, eyes open, waiting. She opened the door. Her makeup was smeared, hands trembling. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. "Ethan, please. I didn't mean..." I sat up slowly, looked her in the eye and said, "You don't need to explain. You were right. I don't deserve your affection, and now you'll never have to worry about giving it again." My voice, calm and steady, was the final nail in the coffin of our pretense. Her knees buckled. She sat on the floor, actually sat there like someone had unplugged her from reality. I could see it hit her, the realization that I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry or scream or plead to fix us. I was simply done. She asked, Is there someone else? I almost laughed. The irony, the projection, the desperation. I shook my head. No, just someone I'm starting to remember how to be. For the first time, her tears held no power over me. She cried harder than I'd ever seen, but I didn't feel anything. No anger, no pain, just peace. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I didn't leave the house. I stayed in our bed, alone. She slept on the hallway floor, sobbing quietly, thinking I couldn't hear her. I heard everything, but I had finally stopped listening, because the truth was, her affection used to be everything to me. And now I wouldn't take it back, even if she begged for it. A week after she found the photos, she was different. Softer, too soft. She started texting me during the day again. How's your morning? Should I pick something up for dinner? Like she could glue our shattered pieces back together with small talk and Thai takeout. But she still didn't bring up the man. Not once. She never apologized, never asked what I knew, how long I'd known it, or what I planned to do. She was hoping to wait it out, rewind time, reset everything. But I wasn't standing still anymore. She thought it was a second chance. I knew it was her final curtain. I had already scheduled the dinner. She thought it was just a quiet evening at home. I told her to wear something nice. She came downstairs in that green dress I used to love, the one she hadn't worn in years. I could tell she'd put in effort, the way she'd curled her hair like she did in the beginning, the way she smiled nervously like she was trying to charm me back into forgetfulness. We sat at the table. Candles, her favorite wine, homemade risotto. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man across from her. Calm, collected, empty in all the ways she used to manipulate. And then the doorbell rang. She looked confused. Are we expecting someone? I didn't answer. I walked to the door and opened it. Don't miss this pivotal moment, the truth laid bare. Her parents stood there. Behind them, my sister. Behind her, our mutual friends, Derek and Alina. One by one, they filed in, each holding a copy of a sealed envelope I had delivered earlier that week. Inside those envelopes, a printed letter from me, 4 pages titled The Truth You Deserve to Know. It included photos, timelines, screenshots, everything I had collected over the last 3 months. The lies, the fake business trips, the restaurant receipts for 2, the hotel check-ins under her name and his, and most painfully, her own words from the voicemail, typed out in black and white. Her mask didn't just crack, it shattered into a million pieces. Lyra stood frozen as everyone entered. She tried to speak, but her mother put up a hand and shook her head. My sister walked past her without looking. Derek and Alina sat down on the couch in silence. I could see it on her face. The realization that the mask she'd worn so comfortably had finally cracked. She turned to me, whispering in disbelief. You invited them? I answered quietly. They deserved honesty. I gave it to them. You gave them lies. She looked at the table again. The wine, the candles, the meal. It all hit her at once. This wasn't a dinner of reconciliation. It was her farewell. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I simply stood there, letting the weight of what she'd done unravel in front of the only people who ever cared about us. That was her punishment. Not humiliation, not revenge, but exposure. She didn't just lose me that night. She lost the version of herself she'd carefully crafted in everyone else's eyes. She stormed out of the house 20 minutes later, didn't take her purse, didn't say goodbye, just silence and slamming doors, and the sound of a woman watching her entire story collapse. And me, I stayed at the table. I finished my wine. For the first time in years, the food didn't taste like ashes in my mouth, because the ghost she thought I'd become, he was already gone. Why the quietest ending can be the most explosive beginning. She didn't come home that night, or the next. I never asked where she went. I didn't need to. Whatever world she ran off to with her charm, her lies, and her fantasy of being the victim, she could keep it. I had my world back, or at least what was left of it. 2 days later, the official end to a decade of lies. I slid the final envelope into our mailbox. The divorce papers, clean, prepared, and already signed. I didn't need closure. I just needed peace. I left a simple note on the kitchen counter. No need to talk. Everything you need is in the envelope. I won't be back. I walked out of that house, our house, and never looked back. The funny thing is, you always imagine leaving will feel dramatic, explosive, emotional. But for me, it felt like quietly setting down a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying for years. No more pretending, no more wondering, no more waiting to be chosen. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt slowly, quietly. I didn't rush into anything. I read books I had long forgotten. I made scrambled eggs at 2 a.m. just because I could. I reconnected with my brother. I took walks in silence. I started sleeping through the night again. The day I laughed again, a sound I thought I'd forgotten. And one day I laughed, really laughed, over coffee with a friend who didn't know a thing about Lyra, who only knew me as I was in that moment. Flawed, healing, but whole. I won't say it was easy. I won't lie and tell you I didn't miss the comfort, even the twisted kind. But I will tell you this. She was wrong. I did deserve affection. I did deserve loyalty. And most of all, I deserved the chance to start over. She tried to erase me with distance. I erased her with peace. And that, in the end, was more powerful than anything she ever expected. This truth is more powerful than any lie. Ready to learn the real power of walking away?